Israel in 2012 to realize our social vision of creating a better society through the language of photography, of social activity, and of creating a dialogue between art and different communities in Israel. We believe that photography is a universal language that reaches across all cultures and genders to be understood by all, a language that allows for building bridges between central and remote areas and between unprivileged communities and the public. This evening, we will hear a conversation between artist Dániel Szalai, whose solo exhibition Novogén is exhibited as part of this festival, and curator Ameze Mucci from the Capa Contemporary Photography Center in Budapest. At the end of the conversation, we'll have a short Q&A session. I would like to thank the Embassy of Hungary in Tel Aviv and the Capa Contemporary Photography Center in Budapest for their support in Daniel's exhibition and in this event. Before we will start the talk, I am proud and excited to invite Mr. Levente Bencu, Ambassador of Hungary in Tel Aviv, to give his opening remarks.
Thank you, Yara, and good evening to everyone. Huge welcome to everyone joining us this evening. It's a special honor to be here and to introduce a talented Hungarian photographer, Mr. Dániel Szalai. And it's a particular honor for us, the Embassy of Hungary in Israel, to have contributed to his work of art being exhibited at the 8th Photo Israel Festival. All the more so that cultural events of the sort we are speaking about today, tonight, have become precious commodities in the past year with successive rounds of lockdowns due to the pandemic all over the world. Hungarian photographers and photo art are not unknown in Israel. Back in the 1940s and 1950s, the famous Hungarian-Israeli photographer Zoltán Kluger captured the years of the newborn state of Israel in iconic still shots that have engraved in the memory of an entire nation. Or let us take another example, the groundbreaking photojournalist born in Budapest in 1913, who has also traveled and photographed a lot in Israel, Robert Capa. His works were on display in Israel more than once, with the assistance of our embassy, last time in the framework of the Hungarian Cultural Year in Israel. On that occasion, as well as today, in excellent cooperation with the Hungarian Capa Contemporary Photography Center. Tonight, you will get acquainted with another Hungarian talent, Mr. Dániel Szalai, whose exhibition has just reached Israel and whose work of art the Photo Israel Festival considered worthy of showing to the Israeli audience. In his project, titled Novogén, Dániel focuses on a special breed of poultry, the Novogén white light chicken, whose eggs are used in the production of human and veterinary pharmaceutical products, such as medicines and vaccines. We couldn't have been more timely during this pandemic. The chicken he photographed are almost entirely human-manipulated creatures, developed over the course of the last 60 years as a result of genetic interference, the development of biochemistry, and of agricultural technology. One could argue that the artist intended to raise questions and dilemmas regarding technological progress and man's relation to nature through an investigation into industrialized farming. Although it will be, of course, up to Dániel to deliberate about this more in detail. The project itself consists of 3 main parts. The core is formed by a large-scale photo installation, which comprises 168 portraits of individual chicken. The portraits are supplemented by a series of photographs documenting the environment of the production facilities where the chicken are held and the eggs are being produced. And the final part consists of extracts from the management guide to the Novogén white light and from the marketing material of the company which produces them. In addition, there's a video interview with the artist providing details on the realization of the project. The Novogén project has received multiple recognitions internationally, including the Selected Artist for Breda Photo 2018 International Talent Program, winner of Best Portfolio Award at the Capa Center's Budapest Portfolio Review in 2018, the Carte Blanche Award also in 2018, founded by the Paris Photo Picto Foundation and SNCF Gare et Connexion. Nevertheless, I do not wish to steal the show from Daniel and his work of art. Let him speak about the Novangen project. All that remains for me now is to remind everyone to visit the exhibition in person at Kikar HaMedina in Tel Aviv and see this interesting project for yourselves. The chicken are all there waiting for you. Thank you again for joining and have a wonderful evening. Daniel, I wish you lots of success and it's a pleasure collaborating with you. Likewise, a similar appreciation once again to Photo Israel and the Capa Center in Budapest, curator Emma Shemuchi in particular. Thank you very much and have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Banku, for being with us this evening. Thank you. We really appreciate it. And now I would like to present our speakers, Dániel Szalai and curator Emma Shemuchi. Dániel Szalai is an Hungarian artist working on large-scale photography-based project. In his latest work, he focuses on human-animal relations, reflecting social, political, and economic anomalies. Zalai mixes different media in his artistic practice and also works with spatial installations. Besides studying photography at the Moholy-Nagy University of Art and Design in Budapest and in the University of Applied Arts in Vienna, Zalai also holds a bachelor degree in the art and design theory. Dániel is a member of the Carte Blanche Collective and the Studio of Young Photographers, Hungary. He lives and works in Budapest. And now, Emma Shemuchi. She graduated from the Faculty of Contemporary Art Theory and Curatorial Studies at the Hungarian University of Fine Arts and from the Faculty of Hungarian Literature and Linguistics at the University of Szeged. She started publishing art critics, essays, and interviews in various journals in 2011. Since 2013, she has also been involved in organizing contemporary art exhibition as a freelance curator. In March 2014, she became the editor of Art Magazine. She is a board member of the Hungarian section of AICA, International Association of Art Critics, and a curator at the Robert Capa Contemporary Photography Center in Budapest. She started her PhD studies in 2018 on film media and contemporary culture program at ELTE University. So Dániel and Emma, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the introduction, Yara, and thank you for the speech, Mr. Levente Banker. And I'd like to share my screen. I believe it's okay.
Oh.
A moment.
In the meantime, I would also like to say thank you for Capa Center and Photo Israel, and also for Mr. Levente Banker for the warm welcome. It's really a pleasure and an honor to be here.
Okay. So, first of all, I'd like to ask you, Daniel, about the topic itself, like how you find out that this topic can be interesting for you as a photographer, and also that this topic could be a hot topic also in contemporary art, in the context of contemporary photography and in the context of contemporary culture.
Well, it's a really complex topic and a complex question. How I started to work on this project was that I was a student at the Molina University of Art and Design, and we were invited to the International Talent Program of Braille Photo in 2018. And the festival subject was The Infinity and Beyond, and we were supposed to ask questions about whether the current state of development in terms of technology actually creates a better society, or what questions does it raise. And as Yara was told, I have a theoretical interest. I think it also worth mentioning that I spent half a decade in commercial film production, and I'm also trained as a photographer. So that's how all my different interests come together. And when I started to think of possible themes and subjects for to discuss these questions, I came across chicken, which is basically is a completely man-manipulated creature. I think it is a quite fascinating intersection between man-made and natural. So it's a born creature, but it's fully controlled. Also, the life of the chicken is fully controlled, but of course the evolution of the chicken is entirely controlled. Oh yeah, that's me in the factory. And so I started to think of talking about the conflicts and questions of technologies through this very technological creature, the chicken. But it also adds a lot to the project, and it's a very important aspect of the project that these chickens that I photographed, these Norwegian white chickens, are not so-called broilers, so they are not meant to be eaten, but they are kind of factory workers producing another product, the egg, that are later used for the production of pharmaceutical products. So, of course, there's lots of debate about animal welfare, and the chicken, I think, is quite an interesting subject. Recently, I had a conversation about this work, and I was asked whether this project raised different answers and different reactions from all over the world where it was exhibited. And then I realized that actually people kind of reflect to this topic quite similarly. And I think this is quite a lot because the chicken is a kind of a symbolic animal of contemporary culture and our society. So yeah, that's how this whole deconstruction of the chicken started. And the entry point to the project was a very simple gesture of creating portraits of factory workers of chickens. But it all expanded as I discovered the subject, and I found out more about the Norwegian whites and how they are being raised and what role do they play in the pharmaceutical industry.
And let's speak about the title of the project, which is also the name of this specific hen. That's Norwegian. Could you please tell more about this specific animal, and also like why did you choose as a title the name of the chickens?
Yeah, so the project is called Novogene, as you said. It's actually a French company, and also it's a brand of chicken, which is already kind of a strange thing that there is actually an animal which belongs to a brand. Yeah, when I first started to work on the project, I didn't have a title to it. But of course, the portraiture is quite an important part, and I also wanted to include this documentary series besides the portraits, because I think it's quite important to, first of all, to make it clear that these chickens are not, the chickens are portrayed, they're not meant to be eaten, but they serve a different purpose. But at the same time, they really just serve as a kind of raw material or kind of organic carrier or biological carriers of our technology. And I think this is quite important to show. And during my research, I came across all these different texts that I think are very much telling about how we actually conceptualize these animals. So the company marketing materials and the management guide of the Norwegian chickens uses a quite utilitarian and this an optimistic description of the chickens. For example, the slogan of the Nובוגן chicken is as follows: the Nובogén white has been designed to perform in various environments. Easy to manage without specific techniques of management. With the Nובogén white, you will get satisfaction thanks to its performance potential, its excellent internal and external quality traits. And when I read these, I was like, wow, boom, this is like a washing powder or something like that. And I think there's this very much kind of arrogance from humankind towards nature, that we kind of believe that everything can be controlled and translated into numbers. And so they really speak about these animals as a product developed to perfection. And more, I started to resonate with this other topic of, or this other understanding of the project, this kind of metaphorical reading, which is, I think, quite exaggerated by the human-like portrayal of the animals. And I wanted to emphasize that as well and speak about the questions regarding technology, but also kind of you have this allegorical reading possibility for the project to speak about how we actually think of our environment, but also sometimes like about us. And I think this project can be quite a lot a metaphor for our commodified existence. And this gesture, like this aspect is quite, is very much communicated through these texts. And so I found it quite important to use this title and also to speak about to present the framework of the existence of the chickens, like the company, because basically the whole evolution of this special breed is or the structure and framework of the evolution is the company itself. And sometimes I also have this maybe a bit crazy ideas that nowadays companies are replacing God in some ideas, or like this kind of transcendental exterior force that leads your life. And so the company needs you to do this, and so it's the company's interest to do that and that. Whereas we are the company, but we kind of create this external force. And so I think it's quite funny to think of these animals as creatures being manufactured in the framework, or like their existence being manufactured in the framework of a company plan, let's say.
Yeah, so you mentioned that the project consists of 3 main parts, but before we have a closer look of these parts, I'd like to ask you to speak about like the behind the scene moments and like how you could work together with these specific animals.
Yeah, it's also important to add to have an understanding of this image that these chickens are so-called SPF layers, which stands for specific pathogen free, which means that they are free for all known poultry diseases. So they are basically like they have a kind of virgin immune system. They live their entire life within this fully controlled and closed environment. So they are being raised and spend their entire life and then die at the premises of this farm. And they are kept under positive pressure. They have filtered air. The lighting program in the shed is computer controlled. They are held on a special diet. And so that's how they can be free of all known diseases. And that's how they have this kind of virgin immune system, so that the eggs that they lay are actually usable substrates for vaccine production. And so because of that, I didn't have any other choice than to get into the shed to take the photos. I couldn't take out the chickens. They wouldn't survive outside this environment. And also, of course, in the second you take out the chicken from the shed, they lose their SPF status, and so they cannot be used as workers anymore. So the project, as you said, comprises of 3 main parts. Of course, the textual parts are easy to imagine how I got access. And also I have to add that the company Novogen was really, really nice to give me the right to use this title and to name them as the brand. I think it's for me, it was very important to have their support, and also to be able to speak about this topic as a kind of case study and not just chickens in general. I think it gives a certain kind of power to the project. And so, yeah, I set up the studio within the shed where there's 10,000 chickens and 2,000 cocks living all together. It's quite a mess. They are really, really loud. And also the ceiling height is not too high. So I had to do all the portraits in my knees, which took 5 days to produce. It's not that easy sometimes to take photographs of chickens. They don't really like to pose for the camera, and they haven't seen people in their life cycle that much. So they don't really know what I want from them. And they are not interested in voices like dogs. So you can't just boop, 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 or something like that for that. So it took me 7,000 images actually to have 168 usable ones. But they are actually quite nice. And most of them are cooperative because they like to sit on these higher level things anyway. So they kind of enjoy staying there. The only thing is that you can't really control where they actually look at. But at the very end of the photo shoot, like literally at the last day, I realized that actually if you grab them by their peak, they got shocked for a second because of course they haven't experienced anything like that. So then you can adjust their head position according to your wish, and they freeze for a second, and then you can take a photo.
So you also mentioned that the chicken is a strong metaphor, and we also have another object, which is the egg, which is another very strong metaphor in the project. And I'd like to ask you about like how you interpret these strong metaphors in your own way in the project.
Well, as for the chicken, it's always a question if we should start with the egg or the chicken. But let's start with the chicken. I think the chicken is a quite important symbol of contemporary society. As I said, here you can see the evolution of broilers over the last 50 years. And basically, chickens were one of the first animals to be domesticated, and they have a really long and interesting cultural history that somehow followed the changes in human society over the course of history. So, for example, in the Egyptian culture, they already used they already had artificial hatcheries, and in Roman times, it was also very, very popular with these Roman feasts. Actually, in 161 before Christ, they already introduced a law that limited the number of chickens that can be consumed in a family. So in Roman times, chicken had a big career, but then it went to decay during the Middle Ages, and then it wasn't up until the Second World War that chicken made it today's kind of miracle animal. Because during the war, of course, many horses were dying, and the agriculture had a difficult situation. And humanity wanted to look for a quick source of protein, and chickens seem to be the most suitable animals to work with, because they have a really quick evolution that can be controlled quite easily. And thanks to antibiotics and artificial vitamin D, they can be kept in a really dense environment. And so they can actually convert feed like grain to protein quite efficiently. I think it's 2-to-1, whereas if you compare it with cattle, I think there you need to give like 3 kilograms of food to produce 1 kilogram of meat. So it's a completely different thing. And as you see in this photo that you just shared, chicken made a really quick evolution, and their weight is 4 times as much as it was in 50 years ago. But it's also like, and now it basically feeds the world, and it's this miracle animal. And I think it's chicken is, as I said, it's a symbol of contemporary culture. They also say that, of course, you don't have to take it literally, but they say that like in a longer perspective of history, in 10,000 years probably, if they make an excavation and they reach our level of society in the ground, then there will be just plastic bottles and chicken bones. And I think that's quite interesting. But also I have to point out that these chickens that you are now showing are broilers, so they are bred for their meat, whereas the ones that I photographed are layers, and so they are bred for their to lay eggs. And these chickens die in the age of 56 days usually, but the Nובogén white chickens don't live this kind of live fast, die young kind of culture. They have a different life. They live for almost 2 years. But yeah, I think it's this whole expanding society and overpopulation is and kind of consumer society can be seen or can be read metaphorically in the evolution of chicken and their current status in our economy and agriculture. And if we go for the egg, well, when I worked in this project, I was really fascinated by this topic. But what I found like really interesting and which raised questions in me, that I've seen so much technology and I've seen so much advancement in the field of medical sciences and everything else. But at the very end, there's still this very simple symbol, the egg, that are used for producing these life-saving vaccines. And so I think this phenomenon that we still rely on nature in a specific form, at least, even if it's not like intact wilderness, I'd say, is quite telling. And it's a really nice closed symbol. And here you see this. It's a Nובogén white egg that I hold in my hand. That is being lit through. It's actually a part of the process usually in the vaccine production. It's called candling, when they look through each and every egg and assess whether its quality meets the requirements of the factory. But yeah, I think you pointed out actually in one of the articles that you wrote about this topic and this body of work, that it's quite an interesting symbol, an important symbol of creation and life itself, or this is the cosmic egg, if you consider it. And so if you have this mythical motif of the cosmic egg in your mind, and take a look at this photo, then, as you said, and I also share this this idea and feeling, that it also tells a lot about how contemporary human society and today's mankind actually think of the very act of creation and nature itself. So yeah, I think that's it's a double symbol, let's say.
Okay, thank you. And let's move to and take a closer look to the three main parts.
All right. Yeah, that's the most important part of the project. It's an installation of 168 portraits of chickens. Basically, I think I already mentioned that if you go up to the website of Nובogén, that you can browse through the different types of chickens as products. And so I wanted to create a kind of workers tableau and introduce and portray these special hens as the protagonists of an industry, to kind of portray their invisible, like to pay tribute to their invisible labor, because they are actually factory workers. But also I wanted to play around with this dichotomy of being a producer of a product, but also being a product by themselves or by ourselves as well. So I photographed them on the threshold of portrait photography and kind of backshot photography from the language of advertisement. Yeah, here you see a better close-up of them. And I also chose this blue background, which I think is quite important. And it also, I have to admit that I believe it has to do a lot with the kind of success of the project, because it looks good. But it wasn't my only intention to use a background that looks good with the chickens. It's also, it came because of the environment of the chickens, where they use a lot of UV lighting, like black light. And so, as I said, they are kept in this completely isolated environment. And there's no bridge between these two universes of the chicken shed and the human society. And they are kept in this closed environment. So I wanted to play around with this gesture of bringing the factory environment, which they are actually separated from, back to the environment of the chickens. But also blue itself has a lot of references in art history. As far as I'm concerned, Egyptian blue was the first synthetic pigment to be ever produced. And so this also tells about these chickens being at least as technologically based and kind of artificial as they are natural. Also, it's a color associated with saints and noble people, which has a very simple reason, that blue is the least present color in nature in a tangible material form. And so it was made from gemstones at first, and it was super expensive. But it also tells about this kind of artificialness of the chickens. So that's the story about the portraits. And of course, it's quite important to play around with the question of individuality, to show the scale of mass production, to portray a lot of animals, but also to pay individual attention to each of them. And I think it happens quite often, or at least according to my experiences, it happens quite often that people think that at the first glance, when they took a look at the installation, that I took all the portraits from the very same hand. And I think that's also important, because it tells about how we conceptualize these animals as kind of identical products. Yeah, so that's the main part of the project, this installation of 168 different portraits. And the second part of the project is a series of documentary photographs where I follow the kind of deadpan, objective, naturalistic description, and I focused on telling the story of the chickens. Here you can see the shed where they are kept in this red, under these red lights, with drinking and eating facilities. And in the middle section there is the chicken coop where they lay the eggs, and when they lay the egg, it directly goes onto a automatic bell system that transports all the eggs out of the shed. And so this is the egg belt, which you see here. And then the eggs go through different processes of selection and measuring. They measure the weight, the size, they look for cracks. They do the so-called kettling, which I said. And then they put the eggs into a incubating machine. And where the embryo starts to develop, they are all fertile eggs. That's why they also have this candling process to check whether they are actually really fertile, because they need the embryo in it. And then when the embryo reaches a certain stage of development, they open up the egg and with a small crack, and they inject this CVV into it, this candidate vaccine virus, when you speak about flu vaccine, for example, but they can also use it for different things, and put it back put back the eggs into the incubating machine where the embryo develops and the virus develops with it. And so they basically poison the egg and the embryo with this virus. And at the very last stage, where the egg is still present, they open up the egg and they harvest this liquid, which is basically a very pure kind of poisoned, or I don't know how maybe that's not the right expression, but so yeah, it's a poisoned liquid, and that's the basic of the flu vaccine, for example, but also the other vaccines. Then they kind of weaken the virus, and that's the basic of the vaccine that you get in every November, and that's how these chickens basically save our lives on a daily basis, and also their fellow chickens' lives, because they also use these vaccines, these kind of egg-based vaccines, in many different parts of the world for many different purposes, also for medicine development and research processes. So that's the story what this other part of the project, this documentary series, tells. And also, of course, it's quite important to see this controlled process, to see how this happens, because I think it raises a dilemma. Like for me, at least, it was quite important that at first I was like, wow, this is really terrible. I was really shocked when I've seen how controlled the chicken's life is, and then how cold-hearted, let's say, this process is. But I can't just say that, okay, but let's free all these chickens then, because they'll save our lives and they save other animals' lives. So it's rather a dilemma which I'd like to speak about, and to show what price do we pay and what price nature pays for our own well-being, than to make a statement, because I wouldn't be able to tell actually what the good solution is. I think we are just technological by nature now, and technology is inseparable from us, and we have to admit that in a way, or accept that, or live together with that. Oh yeah, and the very end, the vaccine itself, the labeling machine.
Yeah, so the project is in between documentary photography and conceptual art project. And how do you define, if you have to define the project genre?
Well, it's really strange. I change this answer quite often, I think, but I try to think about this project as an independent art project, and my main purpose was to create an art project, and not to tell a story in itself, like in a documentary manner, or like it's not a reportage, even though you could take this photo out of, you could take this photo and publish it besides a scientific, or maybe not this one, for example, but there are some images in the documentary series which are actually completely real. I mean, this is also real, but of course you see that there's no label now in the machine, because I was not allowed to take a photo of that. And also I wouldn't even want to, because I don't want to tell a very specific story of one certain type of vaccine production. But yeah, to get back to your question, it's on the threshold of art and pure documentary or reportage. But I think it's quite important for me to see the different parts in a different way, because when in this documentary series, I work with a very clear description and a very kind of objective way of representation, which I think is also, of course, a face of photography and a possible use of photography to tell a story as it is. But on the other hand, in the portrait series, I work on the threshold of advertisement and portraiture, which is already a gesture. And like I show how photography can be actually also used to be a mean of turning something into a product and selling you something through its representations or form of representation. I think photography itself is a medium with kind of two faces, and its use in contemporary culture has two very different means, because it can be a source of a certain type of truth, at least, let's say. Of course, it never tells the truth, but it can be used to tell something about our lives, but also it can be used in an evil way. And I think photography itself is a very important means of contemporary capitalistic culture that helps like big corporations and media to turn us into chickens, let's say. And so I wanted to show both sides of photography in this project. With the chicken portraits, it's a completely like it's a kind of willful misuse of contemporary photographic representation, where I show the gesture, I kind of misuse the gesture of portrait photography and advertisement photography. But on the other hand, I also use the photography in this kind of straightforward way in this project. But at the very end, or to make it short, I would say that it's an artistic project. And if someone would like to get to know something about it in detail and have a factual description of the process of vaccine production, then don't take a look at my photos. It's not going to tell you the very truth, or you should rather read something that's more specific. I rather raise questions.
My next question is that, do you consider your research as an investigation?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I think this is, by now it's a standard process in my artistic practice that I always start off with a seemingly unreasonably detailed research. Because of course you don't necessarily need to read about Roman laws regarding chickens to take this to create this photo series. But I enjoy this very much, and I feel more secure if I'm more aware of what I actually do. So yeah, there's always an investigation behind the series. And in many cases, it is also being transformed into a written piece, which summarizes the kind of factual parts of the research. But at the very end, when I create the work, I always try to, as much as I can, forget about the factual part and the investigation, and not create a project that is actually an investigation, but what is based on the investigation.
And sometimes we work together on the realization of the project as an exhibition, and we can see also one of these collaboration. It was situated in the Budapest Park, which is an open air venue for concerts and cultural programs. So many people can just pass by and see the photographs and the whole installation. And also in the framework of Photo Israel, the project is exhibited in the public domain. So what do you think, why it's like open air installation is a good realization of this photo project?
Well, what I'm really happy about, and was not first, at least at first, was not my purpose, that it's a kind of versatile project, and it's very much relatable. People just like the chickens very much. Because of course, as I said, it's a very common symbol, and everyone has an opinion about chickens, and everyone has some sort of connection to chickens. And I think it's quite nice to see that people react to the project, and they form their opinions, and also the process how they how they realize what is the story behind the project is quite important. And yeah, like as I said, like just 2 minutes ago, my intention was to make art, but I also very much enjoy the fact that it seems to be an accessible project for people, and it seems to be a very effective way of raising questions and starting to debate about our kind of connection to nature and our environment and other non-human beings. And so I think it's quite nice that the project has been exhibited at several different places outside, where it's more accessible to different people. It's more inclusive, let's say, because of course, if you exhibit it in a gallery, that's very nice, but it only reaches a small portion of a society. Whereas in an outdoor exhibition, just as here in Photo Israel, for example, which you see, it reaches a greater audience. And I think this is also an important gesture in terms of making a bridge of art with larger society, and not to keep it for a privileged small like minority of the world. And also it's quite nice to play around with different installations. For example, here it became quite big, and I was really happy to see that. And it's really nice how it's merging with nature here with this tree. But in the other photograph that you showed, for example, in Budapest Park, that was also quite nice to play around with this gesture of advertising and to present it in a kind of light box situation, which is also similar to this city light advertising in bus stops and things like that, which absolutely resonates with the chickens being referred to as products. So yeah, it's an important and fascinating play to explore different ways of presentation. And I'm quite happy to see that it's it works well, and to hear that people do spend time to watch the work, and hopefully they do wonder about some questions that I wanted to raise, or maybe they have different associations. Who knows?
And can you please summarize your artistic intention, like why you use this topic, and what's the purpose of the project?
Well, as an artistic creator, like, people often ask if I'm an activist because I work a lot with animals, or on animals, let's say, seemingly, just as here with the Novangen project. I don't really consider myself as an activist. Like, my projects are very much political in some sense, and very often clearly has political aspects to it. But I don't necessarily consider art as the most appropriate means of making a statement, because it's by its nature not as clear as a verbal statement. But it's a very important means of raising question and raising debate. And by this, it could be a catalyst of change. And I focus on animals, that's true. And I focus on animals because I like them. But at the same time, it's quite important that I use specific manifestations of human-animal relationships that also has a metaphorical reading, because I want to thematize general problems, and problems also in human society, just as human exploitation or the commodification of life, or with the pigeon project that I did a year ago about segregation, or I'm recently working on a project about servants. But I think even though there's a lot of words being spoken about animal welfare, and there is progress in it, we still have a lot to do, and actually we still go quite far when it comes to animals. And often how we treat animals prefigure how we think of other beings, and about actually us, and how we would like to, so how we shape, how we would like to shape human society. And so animal conditioning prefigures human conditioning. And I think it's a really effective way to choose these kind of case studies from the realm of the animal, of animals, thematize them and make investigation to speak about conflicts in human society and human nature, let's say. I don't know if you can call that a summary. Maybe it was a bit long, sorry.
No, I think it was a good ending thought, and we can go to the Q&A part.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Dániel and Mesha, for an interesting talk. And if someone in the audience have questions, please write it now in the Q&A. I saw we already have a few questions. I just want to emphasize that the questions are for Dániel and Mesha. And so I would like to start with questions that are already written down here. And the first one is for Dániel. What was your reasoning or process when placing the portraits of the chickens near each other to create a large work? Was it a random decision or a specific reason behind it?
Thank you for the question. There was a reason I wanted to create this kind of workers tableau, as I said, which you might know from this big company portraits, and also I was brought up in an Eastern European environment with a communist past, and so we also have a lot of this portraiture of workers and this kind of proudness of workers. So I wanted to create this tableau, but it's important to show them in a condensed way, all packed up together, just as they are in the shed. But yeah, in the very core of the project, it's important that it's not a series of individual portraits in a way. Like when I first started to think of this project, how it would look, what I had in mind was this feeling of standing in front of all these portraits and to have this kind of gestalt of this experience of facing this crowd of individual portraits. So yeah, I consider so the question is quite nice because it's one large work, and it's not like that's the work and not the individual portraits in a way.
Thank you very much. So we have here another question. First of all, thank you very much, very interesting. And the question is there other way of vaccine production in this kind of method that you saw and thought to document? And did the work affect your eating behavior?
Yes, there is. So not every vaccines are egg-based, actually. I'm not an expert on the field, so I would rather not tell more about that. I was focusing on egg-based production of vaccines because of the animals. So that was my main subject focus, and I'm not coming from the vaccine production side, but from the animal, from the chicken side, let's say. But there is actually, the question is right. There is actually a different way of producing vaccines, and it did affect my eating behavior slightly. I do still eat eggs, sorry. But not that many chickens. But it's of course it's an ethical question, and I know that it's harmful for the environment to eat meat in many ways. And I also, like, as I said, the chickens I photographed live a quite decent life. They're quite well off. But the chickens kept for eating, as broilers, they do not live a decent life. And I spent too much time between these 12,000 chickens, and I have this smell of the chickens in my nose. So after that, I just it's not an ethical obligation, but a very essential based decision.
Thank you very much. I have another question of mine, and I wanted to ask. There's a lot of criticism in this project. You talked about it yourself also. And I wanted to know if there's a specific goal regarding like kind of change you want to make through this project. I know you said that you're not an activist, but it's kind of actually was a bit surprising to hear when one is focusing so much about the farewell of animals in multiple projects, and you gave so much time of your own for this cause or I don't know, theme. So I still want to ask you if maybe you have like a goal or something that you want to make people think or change in their way of thinking or behavior. And specifically, I wanted to ask if, do you think that this specific, your project and the time that you spend in the Novangen factory will have an impact on the workers or the Novangen factory approach?
All right, thank you for the question. Yeah, well, I did say that I don't consider myself as an activist. Maybe I just don't want to cope with the consequences of such a statement and to carry the weight of being an activist. But yeah, frankly, I'm not really sure if I want to make a change in the world the quickest way possible, then maybe I would have better means than being an artist. But at the very same time, I'm not happy with how things are or about a lot of things happening in our society. And I'm very much critical about how we think of our environment. And yeah, a very important part of my work is the criticism of the distinction between human and non-human, because I think that this creation of this ontological difference makes us feel entitled to do certain things that we really shouldn't do. And I'm very disappointed to see this kind of aggressive way of like this aggressivity towards our environment. And I would definitely like to make a point at showing that we shouldn't be so big-headed and we shouldn't be we shouldn't think of our environment as something that is not part of us and we can actually control. And I think this is quite important in the Novangen project, because this tells about our reliance on nature, even if it means a kind of certain type of nature and not nature as we would like it to be. But yeah, I would definitely like to make a point about this attitude, and I would like to criticize that attitude of placing ourselves above the rest of the world and exploiting it and this belief that everything can be controlled. It's definitely something that I would like to question and I would like people to think of.
I believe you managed to do that. I saw a lot of people visiting the festival and your exhibition and thinking about it. And I think as though you said that being an activist is not as just the same as being an artist, but I do believe, of course, that project like yours can raise an awareness and make a slight difference. So thank you for that. And my next question is actually for Emesha, because most of the project that arrived and are exhibited in the festival are ones that we were in without another outside of the festival curation. And here we were lucky, of course, to have Dániel at the project, but together with you from the Capa Contemporary Photography Center. And I would, and now I even understand that your process together is even longer than what I thought I knew about. But I wanted to ask you about the curatorial process of this project.
Yes, we made this project in 2018 for the first time in the framework of Art Market Budapest. And by that time, it was actually in a smaller booth. So always the space determined the scale of the exhibition and the solutions as well. And by that time, we also exhibited this big tableau of the portrait of the chickens, and together with one image from the let's call it documentary part, and with this video interview, which was mentioned also by Levente and you. And I usually ask artists to make a statement, a written statement, or in a framework of a video. And we also used that video in Budapest Park, that open air venue, which was the next venue of the exhibition. And during that process, we chose light boxes, mostly because the programs in the Budapest Park was in like nighttime or during the evening. So the exhibition itself was more visible, and it looks really good in this like party environment, and it was able to catch the attention of the people who arrived to listen the concert, not specifically for watching the exhibition. So always the venue somehow determine the final solutions for an exhibition. But yeah, we used all the time, we used this small interview and one part from the documentary series, and also this big tableau of the chicken portraits, which you can see in the background. And yeah, that's in a nutshell, we work like that. And of course, for the first time, we had an interview, which is not a public interview, but I asked Dániel about the main intention and then what he wants to highlight. And also he has a really developed vision of the installation of the project. And yeah, we had a longer period to develop that vision together.
Thank you. I think it's quite amazing that even, usually Photo Israel Festival is not in an open space venue. This year it's because of COVID-19 pandemic that we wanted to make it happen anyway, and this is how we have managed to do it. So I think it's quite amazing that this project specifically was originally also located in the public square. So it really emphasized the intent that that everyone will be able to see it and to think about it and to rising up the ideas in this project. And I see that we have here one last question from the audience, and that's for Dániel. Someone is asking, what is your next project?
Oh, I'm currently working on a project about cows, about dairy cows, and actually advanced technology being implemented in factory farming of dairy cattle and then breeding program. So yeah, it's still in development. Hopefully I'll be able to present something next year. But it's also a project which requires a lot of research and also a lot of change in the way I work, because it's also, again, less photographic and more technology based. But I hope it will be an interesting one. It will be like on a human aspect, or in a general aspect, it will be rather about surveillance and social conditioning with computer vision and artificial intelligence. Yeah, I hope it will also raise some questions and make a point. I think it's, I wouldn't say that I don't want to criticize with my project. I just don't want to channel the art project into a very primary mean of making change, but it does influence at least.
Okay, wow, looking forward to seeing it. It sounds interesting. And I would like to say thank you for all of you. I really appreciate you all joining us this evening. I want to thank our speakers, Dániel and Ameshe, and I want to thank Mr. Benku for his presence. Thank you very much for being with us this evening. And I want to thank Inbal Feller, who is with us this evening on the technical side and is in charge of coordinating the festival's online content program. I really hope to see you maybe when the skies open here in Tel Aviv, and it will be really great to really talk one in front of the other, but at least we're happy that we have the option to do it even this way as well. So thank you very much, and I hope to see you in the next event. It's a pleasure to host you here.
Thank you very much for having us. Thank you for the opportunity. Have a nice evening.
Congratulations. Have a nice evening, everyone. And good luck with the cows, Dániel.
Thank you very much. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you very much. Goodbye. Good night.
Bye, everyone.